All right, delighted to be joined by Eric from the US national soccer team. Obviously, you're here in Dublin for friendly against Ireland on Saturday. You had the honour of captaining the USA against Bolivia earlier this week, and you're 29, which actually we're the same age. But yet you're going to have the elder statesman kind of a tag attached to you now because it's such a young team. So as a captain, are you taking time to maybe chat to the players about what's expected, or is this new generation just the type that just gets on with things and just runs with it?
They get on with it and run with it. They're very confident guys on the pitch and off it. They're quite funny and stuff like that. Different generation. Like, I have kids and a family and stuff, and they I don't think can grasp that just yet, because a lot of them are only like 18. A lot of them are like 20. So it's just different, and it's nice to captain the team. I've been involved around U.S. soccer for about 15 years. I started with the youth setup when I was like 14, so it's been a long time, and I'm really appreciative of getting the armband and the call in the last game.
Yeah, and obviously you're playing, normally this time of year you're playing not just friendlies, you're kind of preparing for the World Cup, so obviously this year is a bit different for US soccer. Same thing with Ireland. In terms of the last 4 years, if you're going to take lessons into the next campaign, what are the main things that you would look at this time that you'd make in a kind of different way?
I don't know. I'm not too sure, because I was in and out of it in the last campaign, but I think it's just as a whole setup as U.S. soccer, they're looking for the youth and seeing who could make an impact for the next cycle, and I think it's working out. The last game was a very strong performance by us, and some guys made their professional debut against Bolivia, and they actually scored. One of them was Josh, and Tim made his a full team national team start and scored as well. So it's an exciting time for U.S. soccer with all the young guys coming through, and hopefully they could just continue with their progression, and we'll be a strong force in the next cycle.
Yeah, from the Irish side, there's a young player called Burke. Now, he was at Aston Villa as a young player, and just looking through the historical logs, the two of you actually briefly played together.
Yeah.
There was a League Cup game against Tranmere. Aston Villa won 3-0. He came on as a sub. Do you remember much? Because he was obviously very young, and he was only in and around the first team at that point.
Yeah, I actually do remember him. He was a quiet guy, for sure, but a good guy as well. I think he went on loan to Notts County a couple of years ago as well, because I'm at Nottingham Forest, so I remember the name and everything. I'm not sure where he is now, but
he's actually playing here with Shamrock Rovers, so it's a special thing. Normally, players from the League of Ireland don't get called up to the or to the Irish national team, but he's one of the few that have actually been picked while still playing here, because usually you have to go to England. So
yeah, it sounds like Ireland's a similar situation in the US, where they're trying experimenting a little bit with different players. So it's always good for give guys their chance with the national team, and I know I'm appreciative of it even now at my age. So I know the younger guys, it's just part of their progression, and I know the game in the next couple of days will be a tough one for us, and it should be a really good atmosphere.
Yeah, and I was looking back through your kind of early childhood. So you grew up in a little town in Illinois, am I right? Downers Grove?
Downers Grove, yeah.
So how does soccer come into the equation? Because obviously we have a stereotype of the US being kind of other sports ahead of soccer.
Well, I have two older brothers, and they just played soccer or football. I call it football. I've been in England so long now. I call it football.
I should be saying football as well. But
no, it is football.
We have a sport here called Gaelic football, so sometimes we have to interchange.
Okay, yeah, well, yeah, I've I don't know, just my two brothers played it, so I decided to play it, and I got my opportunity to come over to England because both my parents were born in Poland, so I have a Polish passport. And I just took that, and ever since I've been making a living out of it, and I really enjoy it.
In terms of facilities in that area, I was looking, there's a park called Deerhofer Park, is that how it's pronounced? I think in that town you grew up in. I think there were soccer pitches and things. So
there's loads of them. There's loads of I used to always go to different parks with my brothers and anybody, my friends, like from school. There's loads of different parks I used to go to, but normally they would have a soccer or football field there. So I enjoyed my childhood, I would say.
Yeah. Sounds very outdoorsy.
Yeah.
Obviously, you went on as a kind of mid-teen to the IMG Academy then in Florida. So, and this is long before you go off to England. So, was it the fact that you'd already travelled further afield before you moved to England? Was that a help then when you actually do go abroad?
Yeah, I would say so. When I was 14, I moved away from home for 3 years in Florida at the IMG with the under 17 national team. It was so. It was a tough time. That first year was tough, getting used to it, not being away from home. I actually got my first cell phone, they called it back then, in the U.S. when I was 14. I don't know when the kids get it now.
Yeah.
But it was a change, and I think it helped me being able to adapt when I came over here.
The old phones, I think they used to be sizes of bricks. And
yeah,
I remember,
flip phones and everything.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, I had an old Motorola kind of flip phone, but
Yeah.
like it's gone, like days gone by now.
Yeah.
But you then do move on to Aston Villa. So this is obviously the biggest league in the world for many people, and Villa are a huge club, a club that have won the European Cup back in the 1980s. So how did the move come about then, in terms of how you were scouted and how you ended up moving across?
Wasn't scouted. I was, because I had the Polish passport. My agent at the time just got me different trials at different places, and the team that picked me up was Aston Villa, and Martin O'Neill was the manager at the time. So I remember I had a training session with the first team, and I remember him there. I didn't know much about like the English game or anything at that time. I always was just like watched the U.S. team and a little bit of the MLS, so I didn't know much about it. But it was just had a good 10 days of training. I remember my last day we did a scrimmage, and Kieran Clark, I know, who plays for us, I don't know if he's in the squad now, but he put a huge challenge on me, messed up my knee, and actually I'm thankful for it, because I was absolutely dead by the time it was about like 70 minutes in, so I was happy to come off, and I remember I was limping. I went back to the US and was limping for 2 weeks, but they told me that they were going to offer me a contract, so it was nice.
Oh, happy days.
Yeah.
How did you find Martin O'Neill actually as a manager at that time, especially as a young player coming in?
I thought he was quite good. I didn't have too much to do with it, because by the time I was like almost getting into the first team, he ended up leaving, and when he left, that's when I started to get my opportunities. But I dealt with Kevin McDowell a lot in the reserve team, but from what he produced there when I was in the reserves, it was a really good time for Aston Villa.
Yeah, and you had a few loan moves as well, all clubs starting with the letter L, so Lincoln City, there was Leeds United as well, was another, and
Leyton Orient
as well, so a little coincidence there in terms of the lettering. But loan moves can obviously be a bit lonely when you're moving around the country, but it seems you benefited. So what did you take from each experience?
The first one to Lincoln City, it was just, I never played a professional game, so it was just good to get out and basically see how lucky I was with the facilities at Aston Villa, because we played at, I think they just rented out the place. It was almost like a park kind of, and you had to wash your own kit, and you had to pay for your own meals like after training and stuff like that. So it just opened up to me saying I don't want to be a part of a League Two team. No disrespect to them at the time. I think they're almost got out of League Two now. They're almost in League One, Lincoln. But I just wanted to do well, and which I did. I played, I think, a handful of games, not too many, and I did well in that time. Ended up coming back to Villa and wanted to go out on loan again, but they said that I think I was like second, or I think somebody got injured in the start of January, so I ended up having to stay for the rest of the season. But I ended up training with the first team a bit more then when I came back.
Yeah, and then obviously you break into the first team, and these are the top players in the Premier League. I think very early on, I think it was around December of 2010 or so, it would have been 2010, you take on Gareth Bale, who obviously scored one of the greatest goals you'll ever see in a final against Real Madrid there. When you're going up against players like that as a young player, is there fear, or is it just pure excitement? You want to take these players on?
I wasn't fearful. I was more worried about, because I think I was a couple of games in from making my first team start. I think it was 2 or 3 in. That was like my third start, and I remember a couple of guys saying, "Oh, make sure you're on it," and he's a really good player and stuff like that. I just treat every player the same. I look at what his tendencies are, and I don't think he was the complete player then, because he was he was more like super direct, and it didn't have, I guess, like the skills that he has now. He was a bit younger, so he was pure raw pace, and I didn't really go for it at all. I was just kind of man marking him, making sure that he didn't do too much, but we still ended up losing the game, so it didn't really matter.
Yeah, you did move on to Nottingham Forest, where you are now, and just very recently, obviously this season, I was watching the FA Cup tie against Arsenal, which obviously went very well for you. It was quite amazing. 2 goals. Can you just take us through the feelings, because it is a huge club you're taking on?
Yeah. The first goal was actually quite good, because we didn't really score any set pieces, and I normally never ever go up for set pieces. And just that instance there,